First matchup game of the year for Ohio State facing Oregon. That's number 2 versus number 3 in the AP poll at 7:30 on NBC inside Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. I'm Steven. That's Andrew, and that's Stefan. We'll all be there watching. Andrew, we know quarterbacks are important, and they're going to get a lot of the limelight. They're going to get a lot of the shine. They're also going to get a lot of the blame if they lose on Saturday, right? But it's not a quarterback stat. It's not just a quarterback thing. There's 21 other people on the field at all times, along with the starting quarterback out there. Who is the most important person in the Ohio State-Oregon game not named Will Howard or Dylan Gabriel on Saturday?
I'm actually not even going to go one of the other 20 players on the field. I'm going to say Jim Knowles. I think Jim Knowles is very, very important this weekend because this is why you have Jim Knowles, right? Like, because of the Oregon game a few years ago, right? So not only that, you are playing an offense that you haven't seen before. I mean, you haven't seen an offense that spreads the ball around like this a lot. I mean, we saw Akron try some things. We saw Marshall try some things, but not like this. And Sonny Styles said this after the Iowa game. We've seen a little bit of the offense, but not like this talent. This talent is different, and it is going to be a very unique challenge for Jim Knowles to try and stop this Oregon offense, because everything that we talk about with Ohio State's offense, they get the ball out quick. They get horizontal so they can spread you out, and they make you defend every blade of grass. Say that 3 times fast. They make you do everything that you don't want to do defensively. That's what Ohio State's offense does, and that's why they've been so good. That's what Oregon tries to do. A lot of RPOs. Quick passes. They try to hit you running the ball real fast. They try to get the ball out really fast. That's what Dylan Gabriel does, and that's a challenge for Ohio State's defense and Jim Knowles. And Jim Knowles has to solve that. So what does he do? We're going to find out, because Oregon has really talented receivers. They've got a good running game. Dylan Gabriel, he's accurate. I want to see him in a big game. He's accurate at the very least. We'll see kind of what he can do moving forward. But this is a really important game for Ohio State's defense, because if Oregon can't score, Ohio State might run them out of the building. Like this, I think Ohio State is going to score some points here. So we will see what happens on Saturday. But if Jim Knowles has his defense ready to go, if the game plan is sound, if the guys are ready to play, Oregon's in a lot of trouble.
Every blade of grass, every blade of grass, every blade of grass. That's all I was thinking about the entire time we were talking, was saying that. I do think you bring up a good point of, like, I'm still not sure how this game is going to play out. If it's going to be high scoring, the way we saw that Georgia-Alabama game, or if this is going to be a game that maybe plays out similarly to what we saw with Notre Dame and Ohio State the last 2 seasons, where it was a little bit more low scoring. Both of those games equally competitive, and doesn't take away from any of those 2 things. Who you going with, Stefan? Most important person not named Will Howard or Dylan Gabriel?
Well, Andrew said his name, Sonny Styles. I think we saw – listen, I understand you don't have to be spectacular to slow down Iowa's offense, but the way Sonny Styles played on Saturday against Iowa, I think, changed a lot of things. That was the best version of him that we've seen so far, and it was one of those days where you're watching a game and you're like, oh, yeah, that's why they told us, hey, give him a little bit of time. He's going to figure out. Remember, he wasn't a linebacker last year. I think with what Oregon's offense does and kind of the way they like to utilize the middle of the field as well and kind of get the ball out quick, I think he's going to be asked to do a lot, and I think it's going to be important for him to show up. I think that's going to play a huge factor in this game. You're talking about, you don't know if this is going to be a high-scoring game, what kind of game. I think it might be a game where we kind of see both, where it's either offenses come out hot and then things kind of settle a bit, or maybe defenses start off strong and then the offenses get going in the second half. I think we're going to see a little bit both in terms of how the offenses look in this game. But I think Sonny Styles is going to play a big part in that. I think he's going to dictate a lot of what Oregon can do against this Ohio State defense. And if we see the version of him that we saw against Iowa, or even just something close to that, I think that's going to go a long way for Ohio State. I think he is, if Will Howard is the MVP of this offense, or the most important player to this offense, I think Saturday Sonny Styles is that for the defense.
Sonny's been playing a lot of linebacker positions, and it's just felt like that's been the entire Sonny Styles story since he first got offered by Ohio State as a high school kid. This is a guy who can just kind of play everywhere. But also, in football, all these positions come with their own nuances and own learning curves. So when you're playing safety one year, and then you get to your next year, and your first year you're playing linebacker, and you're playing Mike, you're playing Will, and you're playing Sam, you're trying to learn all those while also, there's this new element in football where you're hearing your defensive coordinator in your head. It's just, I don't think we took that into account with his learning curve of, like, yes, there's already a learning curve, but he has to do it 3 times because he's learning 3 different positions. It felt like last week he spent all that time just being a Sam linebacker. And of course, Ohio State played a lot of three linebacker looks, so he was only at Sam. So I think that's why we saw his best game so far as a linebacker. I think he's only going to be a Will this week, so he'll probably have another really good game as a linebacker because he's not trying to learn three different things while trying to game plan for one of the best teams in the country. Great answer. Good answer. I'm going with Josh Fryer. He's my most important player. And I don't think I would have answered that this way before we talked with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly on Tuesday. But after talking with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly on Tuesday, and the fact that they both went out of their way to mention Jordan Birch, the defensive end for Oregon, who obviously started his career at South Carolina, and now he's at Oregon, who's looked a little game wreckerish. 7 tackles for loss and 5 sacks coming into this game on Saturday. And that's all it takes, man. That's all it takes. 2021, that's all it took. Aiden Hutchinson, game-wrecking that game. Chase Young was game-wrecking. That's all it takes sometimes. All this stuff is great. Yes, Sonny Styles, he needs to be really good. Yes, Jim Knowles, the entire defense. Yes, all that needs to be good. This offense has been awesome. It also has not played someone who might be a game-wrecker. And if he starts wrecking things at the right time, which would be the wrong time for Ohio State, that's going to be an issue. And the reason I said Josh Fryer is because I don't think there's a weak link on this offensive line. In fact, I think right now, that would put them on a short list of offensive lines who should be in conversation for the Joe Moore Award. This is a game to solidify it when you're playing an elite defensive line like Oregon has right all across the board there. Their starting 4-man front has, I think, 52 combined pressures through 5 games, which is pretty ridiculous, actually, when you think about it. But one thing we've seen, Andrew, even going back to last year, is Josh Fryer is solid on that right side. But when he makes a mistake, it's loud, and it comes at very bad times. And I am just wondering, 3rd and 4, you're in scoring position, you need to go. And Will Howard takes a bad sack because Jordan Birch lined up over Josh Fryer, and he beat him.
2 bad plays could ruin it for you, right? And that's the scary part about this. 2, you could be it's a position of failure to play offensive line, especially when you're a tackle. You could play a great game. You could play 50 snaps and 47 of them are great. If you give up 3 sacks, everybody's going to look at you and be like, you were horrible that game, and you're 47 out of 50 where you played really well, but you give up 3 sacks. That not only is everybody going to look at you and say you played horrible, it changes the game.
And it doesn't even have to be 3 sacks. It can just be one bad time sack when maybe it's the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, and you need to go score here, but instead you gave up a sack, and so now you've got to just run the clock out and go. That's momentum. Yeah. That's momentum in those situations, and I'm only singling out him in the situation because we've seen it before. Well, we haven't necessarily seen it with those other 4 guys, though it does seem like Tegra Shabola has solidified himself as a starting right guard. I think Josh Fryer has been better this year, but he had one against Marshall, one of those moments that's just like, ugh. You've been good all game, but also that was not good. And I am just wondering how often on 3rd and long, number 1 in black, because I think they're wearing those black jerseys, is lined up on number 70 in white, and what happens in each and every one of those situations. Sonny Styles, Jim Knowles, Josh Fryer, Andrew Gillis, Stefan Krajisnik, Stephen Means. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts and get the text 614-350-3315. We'll continue to have this conversation on Buckeye Talk as Ohio State prepares to play a top 3 matchup against Oregon on Saturday. See you there.